Jerry Palladino, welcome to the show.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here.
All right, ordinarily I'd welcome everybody to the Cops and Writers podcast, but today, in honor of our guest, it is the Cops and Writers podcast, Riders. Let's start at the beginning. When and where did you start your career in law enforcement?
I started right here in Pasco County, Florida, and I first started in corrections. I was in corrections for about a year and then went out on the road.
Okay, so as far as, you were with the sheriff's department, correct?
Right, that was 1989.
Okay, and back then you had to, I'm guessing, you had to start in the jail before they let you out on the road.
You didn't have to, but
Oh,
at the
okay.
time when they were hiring for the jail, not for the road. So what a lot of people did was sign up for corrections, and then a year or two later, you could transfer out onto the road.
Okay. Now, were you a fully sworn deputy or a corrections officer?
Both.
Oh,
So
okay.
first I got my certification for corrections,
Oh,
and
okay.
then when I asked for the transfer, they were doing what they call a crossover school for deputies from correction to road deputies. So I think
Oh,
that was a 3 or 4 month course. It was a night thing. So after you
okay.
finish work, you went and did that, and then once that was completed, then you'd go out on the road, and then you went through the FTO program.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because the way it used to be was, you had to start in the jail and you did your time in the jail. Then, when a spot opened on the road, then you go back, then you would go on the road, for those that wanted to be on the road. Nowadays, and who knows, maybe it'll change, but a lot of departments just hire correction officers, they hire COs. They don't have any arrest powers or anything like that. They just, they're strictly in the jail. And a lot of them, after they're working in the jail for a while, want to get on the road. That's for sure.
Well, here in Pasco, it was never that way that you
Oh,
had to go through the to the jail, but it just worked out that way, and it was a good thing because spending the year working in the jail, in law enforcement, as any cop knows, it's like 10% of the society. You see the same 10% over and over again. So by working in the jail and going out onto the road, when I ran into somebody on the street, I already knew them because they were the same 10%ers that were coming into the jail every Friday night. So it helped in that way. I knew who the bad guys were out on the street before we even went on the street.
yeah, that's very important. And I'll tell you what, if you've ever worked in a jail, you can always kind of tell the coppers that have done that because they're so good at talking to people. Because you know what? You don't have almost any kind of weaponry and you're always outnumbered.
Yeah, that's for sure.
It's like you learn the gift of gab really quick, because again, you're outnumbered, things could go south really quickly, but you learn how to like treat people, respectfully. And usually that's reciprocated. And, also, you just know how to de-escalate. I know de-escalation is like the cool word right now or whatever, but cops have been doing that for hundreds of years. I mean, that's just the way it is.
I always had sort of the gift of gab. Before I was a cop, I was an entertainer. So I worked, nightclubs, and I had a band, 7 piece band, and a 3 piece band. And then I found out the only way to really make any money in that business was to work alone. So I had a piano player I was working with, and he said he was going to the hospital. He was going to be out for 3 months. He said, if you want to keep this job, you got about 3 4 weeks to learn to play an instrument and the guitar and the bass pedals. So it was either that or go back to work in construction. So I practiced, I mean, 5 6 hours a day with everything that he taught me. And in 3 weeks' time, I was ready to work a single act. I wasn't great at it, but I was always a very good singer. So that covered up a lot. And the guitar combined with the bass pedals, it had a really full sound. So I made a living like that for, oh God, 11 12 years.
Really?
Uh, t-
Okay.
Till I got married and I had to get a real job. And that's when I got into law enforcement.
So, how old were you when you got into law enforcement?
I think I was 32.
Okay, I was 30. I sold cars, I bartended, I went to college. I got a degree in sociology and being having a degree in sociology made me qualified to be a restaurant manager or a bartender or a car salesman. Yeah, that's what it boils
Yeah.
down to. And then,
I sold cars for a while myself.
oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so you feel my pain. Yeah, and I was a musician as well. When I was in college, I started out as a music major, and I quickly discovered that I wasn't good enough to be in performance, that's for sure. That's very, very high tier. It's like a very small percentage of people are, that talented to make a living out of it.
Yeah, I did pretty well for quite a while. What happened was down here about I started that in 1977. In about and you could work in the 70s. You could work 6, 7 nights a week. I even worked 5 nights a week and 6 happy hours a week, and making good money. And back then, 350, 400, 500 a week was good money.
Yeah.
You didn't have security or anything like that. And being single, it was a great way to meet women, even if you weren't big time. There was a lot of women that said, "Well, this guy might make it."
Yeah.
So that
So
was it was a lot of fun in that way, and it taught me to be able to make people laugh and entertain them, and I carried that into law enforcement.
oh, sure.
I with people sometimes. Most of the time, they didn't know I was messing with them, but I got them to do pretty much what I wanted them to do without using force.
Yeah,
When
absolutely. That's what
my
we
favorite
wanted,
things
that's for sure.
I like getting confessions out of people. I think I had a record for a while at the sheriff's office, getting more written confessions than anybody. And they say, "Well, how do you do that?" I said, "Well, I make them an offer they can't refuse. Only
Yeah.
they don't realize that they can refuse."
Oh, that's funny. So from lounge singer to police officer, yeah, what kind of drew you towards being a cop? How did
Well,
that
that
happen?
that it was two things I wanted to do with my life. One was have a hit record, or the other was law enforcement.
Okay.
So since I did it for so many years, I never got the hit record. I wasn't much of a songwriter, and I never found out how you reach the right people to get a song played on the radio. But when I got into law enforcement, the funny thing was I wound up getting a hit DVD. My
Oh,
first Ride Like a Pro video sold over 100,000 copies, and
cool.
I've got 14 videos now on my website, and they're still selling very well. So it was just a lot of things just fell into place, some dumb luck, and you just never know.
Yeah,
When
you're
I
right
first
about that.
when I wanted to get on the motor squad, I knew it, the sheriff's. I was very political, and first they had 3 guys that signed up for it. I didn't even put my name in because I wasn't politically connected to anybody. And one of the guys who was 65 years old when he was going to go to motor school,
Oh,
and he was
jeez.
a friend,
Oh,
and he was a friend of the sheriff. Now that
yeah.
is a tough thing. It's the toughest thing in law enforcement is to pass that motor officer course.
Oh,
So I had a
absolutely.
he wasn't going to make it, and after I think 4 or 5 days, he wound up breaking his ankle, and
Oh,
so I just happened to be walking. I finished my shift, and I'm walking into the sheriff's office, and the major and a lieutenant were walking out, and they said, "Hey Jerry, do you have a motorcycle license?" And I said, "Yeah. Why? Do you want to go to motor school?" And I said, "Sure." So they said, "Okay." So uh, they said, "Well, there was a class going on in Tampa where this guy broke his leg and left the class. They said, you can't go into that one because it's already a week into it, but we're going to send you up to Tallahassee to train with the highway patrol."
oh, cool.
I
Okay.
said, "Okay, great." And that was about a month later. I went up there. The only problem was the guy who was in charge of buying our motorcycles was a major. He was a friend of a guy who owned a Honda dealership. So instead of getting Harley Davidsons, he said, "Well, we'll get Honda Ace Tours and we'll just convert them into police bikes." And you know, I, it's to do that is pretty expensive. So the reason they said the major said he was going to do this because the Harleys were $13,000 and the Honda was 11,000. But by the time they put the lights and
Oh,
did all
yeah.
that stuff, they were right up to $13,000. And plus, the Honda, all the police forces were designed around Harley Davidsons, their wheelbase and the rake and trail. So with a Harley Davidson on the police force, you could screw up 2 feet and still make it through the exercise.
Oh,
With the
okay.
Honda being so much longer, you got 6 inches, and that was it. So you actually had to be a better rider to get through the course on the Hondas than the Harleys. And we only kept them for a year. After all the complaints from us. They said, okay, we'll get the Harleys. And we kept the Hondas as.
Gotcha. Now, was there any law enforcement in your family, like mom or dad or anything like that?
No, no, my mother was a nurse and my father was a bus driver in New York City.
I'll be darned. What do they say when you say, "Hey, I'm gonna quit the music thing. Now I'm gonna be a cop."
They were supportive really
Okay.
through my life. They both passed on now, but they were always supportive of whatever I did.
Okay. All right. Now, what stage in your career did you go to the bikes? How many years did you have on?
Before I went to on motors,
Yeah.
yeah, well, I started in '89 and went through. So it was I think the end of 1998 when I took the motor officer training.
Okay. So about eight, 9 years thereabouts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, when you were on, obviously, they just kind of went up to you and asked you, "Hey, do you have an endorsement? You want to go to motorcycle school?" You, what was like the general selection? Like where I worked, you had to like literally interview like you're going for, a job and and they wanted you to have an endorsement, but it wasn't required, but you'd have to have one, by the end of the course, obviously.
Um, well, there was I guess you could call it an interview. The major said to me after I said, yeah, I've got the motorcycle endorsement. She says, uh, do you have any tickets? And I thought she meant, did I write any tickets that day? So I said, yeah, I think I got 3 or 4 today. She goes, no, no, not right. Do you have tickets on your license, points on your license? And I said, points on my license. I've been a cop here for 10 years. I got this. You don't, I don't get tickets. So that was really about it.
Okay,
She
gotcha.
couldn't tell if I was messing with her or not, but they sent me to the training anyway.
So, what was the attraction to motorcycles? I mean, did you always have like a heart for riding bikes?
Well, I started riding back in 1974 is when I got my first bike, and I rode on and off for oh god, probably 15 or 20 years. Never had any training at the time when I got my
Right.
first bike. Because in New York, you didn't need an endorsement. You got you
Oh,
just
okay.
bought a bike, you passed. I think it was a written test, and that was it. So I always liked riding motorcycles, and also I knew that with motors, you're going to work traffic, so there's very little paperwork, and I hated paperwork.
Yeah. Oh,
So I
yeah.
said, get on a motorcycle all day and much less paperwork. How can you beat that? So
Yeah.
so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to do it. And like I said, I would have put in for it at the beginning, but I had put in for a lot of things over the years. But if you're not politically connected, you aren't
Yeah.
getting what you
Yeah,
do.
it is one of those highly sought after, positions. And like you said, if you've got a rabbi, in the department, it sure helps. Or,
Yeah.
yeah, that's I understand how that goes. And it still goes on today. I've been retired for 5 years, well, almost 5 years from Milwaukee. And I still have buddies that are in the job and all that. And nothing has changed. Nothing will change that way, that's for sure. Now,
No.
when you went through the motor training with the state patrol, what was the toughest part, do you think?
Well, it was all extremely difficult. And I did have guys in my class, they were all troopers except for me, but and I thought they were going to be, busting my balls, but I knew a lot of the guys anyway, a lot of the
Sure.
troopers because we interact with them every day. And I knew since there were people, usually it's like half the class is you're out, you're not going to make it. And I made up my mind that no matter what, I was going to do this and I was going to get through it and I was going to get my certification and be a motor cop. So there was nothing that was going to stop me. I remember having the instructor, he saw that, I had the Honda and I knew that the original class they did in Tampa, the school that they put on said, well, these Hondas are bigger than the Harley, so they stretched the course out to 20 feet versus 18. But the troopers wouldn't do that. The head instructor said, if I'll ride it through each of the exercises. If I can make it, you can make it. And when he rode it through, he says, yeah, it's hard. He said, but you got 4 inches to screw up and that's it. Uh,
Oh,
in fact, the first day I talked to some of the troopers, and some of them didn't have a motorcycle license. Some of them never been on a bike in their lives.
wow.
So when the head instructor came out, he said he's got the keys to the new Harley, and the Harley behind him. He says, "Anybody here know how to ride a motorcycle?" Well, I know not to volunteer or anything, but I figured, maybe he means there's some guys here that never rode. So I put my hand up. And as soon as I did, he jumped in my face. He said, "You don't know nothing about riding a motorcycle, but you're going to know if you make it through this course." And boy, he was exactly right. I quickly found out that the 20 years of riding experience I had meant nothing. I knew nothing about riding a motorcycle. But when I finished that course, I knew how to ride. And I said, everybody should know this. And that's how it came out to be when I came out with my first video, the Ride Like a Pro video, which the very first day I put it on the internet, we sold 80 copies the first day. And I said, I think I got something here.
Yeah, I think you
And
do.
yeah,
I've
it's
been
grown since
riding.
then.
Yeah, I'm 60 years old, and I've been riding since I was 16. I have an older brother that always had a motorcycle when I was growing up, and I had, zero training. He'd hide the keys, but I'd always find them, and I'd take off on his bike, and he'd be, running down the road after me, and I had no clue what I was doing. I'm amazed I'm still alive. But then I get to the police department, and I become friends with some of the bike guys, and I'm like, holy cow, I don't know anything. These guys are amazing. The stuff that they can do on a motorcycle, I was just like, I was awestruck. It's like anybody can go down the road, 50 miles an hour in a straight line. That's not hard. It's that going 5 or 10 miles an hour doing U-turns and all the, figure eights and all this other crazy stuff. I'm like, man, balancing this 900 pound motorcycle is just, it's amazing to me to watch. And yeah, I just, my hat's off to any of the people who make it through that course. Now, for those who don't understand or maybe have a little bit of knowledge, what is the function of a motorcycle unit in a police department?
Well, mainly we work traffic, and the idea of learning to maneuver the bike. First, we start at low speeds. If you didn't get past the low speed part, they weren't going to let you on the track for the high speeds. But you have to maneuver through traffic to get to a crash. And these are cars, not cones, but the cones that you're training with, they represent obstacles. So if you can't avoid the rubber cones in an empty parking lot, you're sure not going to be able to avoid the cars moving, and you're zipping through between them, around them, up and over them. But mainly that's what we do is work traffic. We would also take calls, but only as backup. So if there was a domestic, they would send a regular unit out. And if we were in the area, then we back up that unit.
Yeah, and one more thing, if you ever have a chance to see it, it's pretty incredible to watch the motorcycles for, like, say, a presidential motorcade. They're leapfrogging from intersection to intersection, and those motorcades move out. They don't go slow, they go fast. And to watch that in concert with all those different bikes and all the cars, it really is cool to watch.
Yeah, it's a puckering experience. I've done a couple of them, and you try to block off the intersections, but there's always people who are gonna, you
Oh
know,
yeah.
around the cop. So it's that's the puckering part of it, because you're when that motorcade passes you and they're going at 50 or 60 and you're at a dead standstill, you've got to catch up, go past them, and
Yep.
get to the next intersection to hold it. So I think our Harleys were governed at like 108. So you're on a city street and you're doing 108 miles an hour, hoping to God that nobody pulls out in front of you.
Oh
And we,
God.
this was before we even had ABS brakes. So yeah, it's you got to be a pretty good rider to be able to do that, and to do the job correctly and not get killed while doing it.
Yeah, and that's why the course is pass fail. Either you can do it or you can't.
Yes,
Yeah,
for sure.
that's for sure. So your bike, I'm sorry, your where you worked, they call it the motor unit.
Yeah, motors.
Okay. Yeah, see, it's interesting because I talk to cops, like from all over the world on this podcast, and sometimes they have different, slang for it. We always called it the bikes, or to get on, the bike unit, and we have bicycles too, but it wasn't motors, it was the bike unit, or I need a bikeman. It was all bikemen, but there were females on the unit, but obviously Milwaukee has a very long history with Harley Davidson, being in our backyard, having, motorcycle cops. And a little bit of trivia, we used to ride year round in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee.
Mhm.
And the way they would do it is once the snow started flying, they'd put a sidecar on the motorcycle. They'd ride over to Miller Brewery and get a keg and put a keg in the sidecar, and then they'd put a horse blanket over their laps so they wouldn't freeze to death.
Yeah, the Secret Service does the same thing, and they also have Harley makes it looks like a big blanket that goes around the motor, around the front of it, and then to the around the sidecar, and it keeps the heat from the motor
Oh, okay.
up the rider. So yeah, and they ride all year round. It doesn't matter, snow, rain, whatever.
Really?
Uh,
I did not know
yeah,
that.
yeah. Here in Florida, they gave us a car in addition to the bike. So and you took them both home. So if it was a day that was pouring rain, you would just take your car. Here in
Mm.
the summer, it's like it is right now. It's 95 degrees out. So I would work, start at 7 in the morning, and I would go home for lunch at noon, and I would take the car because it was brutal to be out and
Oh, I can
stop
imagine.
traffic. Yeah, so that's what I would do most of the summer. Now the wintertime, it was great. The winters down we have here in Florida, the Tampa Bay area, 6 months it's horribly hot and humid, and 6 months is just fantastic. We're getting right now. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be into the what I call the Florida riding season, where it's
Okay.
75 degrees and maybe 50 in the morning, and it's just perfect.
Yeah, see, I'm a fair weather rider now. I'm old. When I was young, I didn't care what it was like outside. I'm like, yeah, sure, let's go. And now I'm like, oh, it looks like it might rain. I'll take the car. But but for us, we're almost into October. So our riding season stops in November. And then depending on the weather, you might be able to pull your bike back out in May. So it's kind of a short window, but yeah, what are you gonna do?
Yeah, here it's all year, but the summers are just
Oh yeah,
brutal.
that would be
I
brutal
either
on that
I either
blacks.
get out early in the morning to ride, or
Right.
when the sun starts to go down, it's a little bit better. But most of my riding I do from October until May.
Gotcha. So what was your favorite part about being on the bikes? Or least
Oh,
favorite?
the least favorite would be the heat.
Yeah.
My most favorite is the minimal paperwork that you had to do. So, you write tickets, and you would go to night court. Most of the time we had traffic court was at night down here. I think it
Mm.
was on Wednesday nights. And, that was a bit of an inconvenience because here they didn't pay you for it. They just took off whatever time you spent in court.
Oh
Uh,
wow. Okay.
you got to take, so if you were in court for 2 hours, well, they tell you go home 2 hours early the next day.
Oh
But
gee. Okay.
that was my favorite part was the fact that I wasn't consumed with paperwork and reports, and being out on the bike. It was great. It's prestigious, and people like to talk to you, and they would come up and even hang out with you, whereas you never got that in the car.
Right. Yeah, the bikes definitely attract attention, parades, special events, all that kind of stuff. People, they get drawn to them. It's cool. I think there's a bit of all of us, especially like when you were a young kid, you're like, oh man, those bikes are cool, and it's like you get a little bit older and I think it's hard to get rid of. That's for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's,
If you enjoy, and I thought at first, I said, well, maybe doing it every day, 10, 12 hours a day, I'm not going to enjoy riding on my own. But it was
yeah.
really like two different things. It wasn't like that at all.
Okay,
My
so
my
you didn't get sick of riding your own bike like on a weekend, like your days off or anything like that?
No, on my days off, that's what I wanted to do, was be on my bike.
Okay. Gotcha.
And
Now,
I told
how big of a department were you in? How
uh,
many
I,
members?
I think we had 250 certified deputies.
Okay.
So it's not big. We got, I think, about 1 million people in the county. When I went on, we had 3 motors, and then I think we got up to 5. And then when I retired, I think they went up to 7, but for a very short amount of time. In fact, now they canceled the motor squad because they
Oh, wow.
just don't have people. So there's no
Oh,
more motors in Pasco County.
that's sad. Wow.
Yeah.
That's really sad. So yeah, my next question was, did you have a full-time or part-time like bike unit?
No, it was full time. When
Okay.
I was there, we worked 4 days a week, 10 hours a day, and it remained that way. Like I said, until they stopped the bike unit altogether. They were really kind of foolish. They went out and bought Victory police motorcycles. I don't know if you know what
Really?
Yeah, and they were the most expensive motorcycle. They paid $35,000 for
Oh,
these bikes. And
oh,
the sheriff had asked me, so what do you think of the Victory? I said, well, they're a fine bike, but you're not going to be able to take over because we would get a new Harley every year. We would just switch the lights and sirens, everything
sure.
bolted onto the new one. And I said, you're not going to be able to do that with the Victory. I said, plus the price of them, they're expensive and they're not as maneuverable as the Harleys. Well, they went and did it anyway. And that lasted 1 year, and they decided then they didn't have enough people on the road, so they auctioned the bike off, and I think they got like $6,000 or $7,000 for the $35,000 motorcycles.
Oh my God. Now Victory has gone through a couple of iterations. I know that they weren't building their own engines. I think Polaris owned them, right?
Yeah, Polaris owned them, but they just shut down Victory when they bought Indian. They shut down the Victories altogether with
Yeah.
no warning to the dealers or the buyer. So if you spent 25 grand on a Victory on Friday and then come Monday you found out that you're out of business, I'd be
Oh,
pretty pissed. But that's exactly what they did, and the dealers who had them, they gave them nothing. You would have thought that, well, they bought Indian, so let's just say from now on these Victory dealers are now Indian dealers, but
yeah.
they didn't. You still had to buy an Indian franchise. So,
Oh,
that's what, Indians are nice bikes, but I wouldn't buy one because if they did that with Victory, and they could do it with Indian.
yeah.
And, and plus you got the Indian name, which, like the Washington Redskins have
Yeah,
changed
that's true.
their name, so I'm thinking any time now they're going to be on Indian motorcycles. And what are they going to change the name to? Native American
Right.
motorcycle company? Yeah, fit that on the tank. So
Yeah. No, those Indian motorcycles are iconic. This is years ago. I was like at a family function and there was a volleyball game going on and there's a guy that I thought was old, but is my age now. He was like in his 60s and he had a t-shirt on it that says I love my Indian. And there's a picture of an old Indian motorcycle. And I'm like, "Do you really have one?" He says, "Yeah, let's get out of here." So he lived like a couple blocks away. I followed him to his house and his garage, he had this like super old Indian. I mean, it was such a beautiful motorcycle. I mean, he had he had a Harley Electric Glide and then he had, the Indian. And he says, "Yeah, I rarely take this thing out, but I mean, it was just pristine." And I can't imagine it being called anything else. Because on the front, fender, it's got that headdress on there that lights up, and it's got the the tassels on some of those, like on the saddlebags and stuff. I mean, they're a beautiful
yeah,
looking bike, but like you said, who knows how long they're going to be around as
yeah,
well.
because they're after the same market, the heavyweight cruiser market, as
Right.
Harley Davidson, and sales are down right now. Sales are down for I think 25% for all motorcycles, but
Yes.
it's more expensive motorcycles like Harley and Indian. They're hurting. They're way down in sales, and the Harley Davidson. That's all they make. Well, Polaris makes Indian motorcycles. If they drop Indian, which they wouldn't do, they would just sell the name to another company because that
Right.
Indian has been sold probably 6 or 7 times.
Yep.
But they have the snowmobiles and the
Yeah, the
ATV and all that stuff.
watercraft, they have all kinds of stuff. Yeah.
Right. So that's
Abs-
not their main concern. And I always worried about, well, what happens if they sales go down? Because as far as I know, they haven't made money in the past couple of years, and that's what happened with Victory. 2, 3 years in a row, they didn't make any profit, and they just shut it down.
yeah, and I've got a Harley. I'm wearing my Harley t-shirt because of what we're doing right now. And I go to the rallies and the events and all that. And they're all kinds of fun, but there's a bunch of old dudes there. You don't see a bunch of younger people. It's almost getting aged out. It's all baby boomers was their big market. But like young folks, you don't see a lot of them riding around on Harleys.
Well, I at my class over the past, I'd say 3, 4 years, I'm getting younger and younger people
Oh,
on
that's
on
good.
Harley Davidsons. Yeah, so I have seen it. The main thing holding them back is the Harley Davidsons are expensive motorcycle. They've always
Oh,
been expensive. So if you're a young person and you're making what $35,000 a year, you can't afford a $30,000 motorcycle, but you can find a 2, 3 year old motorcycle, and that's mainly what it is. That come to my class. They're on used bikes, but they are on Harley Davidson. So I think their age right now is 40 to 50 years old is their main
okay.
buyer and market. So it is getting younger. And while, yeah, there's a lot of Harley riders that are older and they're dying out, but I believe that they're being replaced. They may never have as big a sales years as they had from what 1995 until 2008. That was
Right.
their big boom time. But it's been going down since then. But so have all motorcycle manufacturers,
Yeah, that's something else. Yep.
except for the
So,
really cheap ones like Royal Enfield. They sell a lot of them because they're $4,000 or $5,000, and
oh, okay, sure. Yeah, see,
yes,
I bought my Harley in 20 and it was a 2017, so it was 3 years old. And I bought that Street Bob and that's more of a stripped down bike. I had a big bagger, but it was a Yamaha Roadstar. I rode that thing for 20 years. And I'm like, you know what? I don't need a 800 pound, 900 pound bike anymore. And I'm not taking cross country trips or anything like that. And I've done it, but I'm not doing it anymore. It's like I'm getting too old for that stuff. And I'm having a blast on this Harley with the big engine and a light frame like that. It's so much fun.
yeah, they're a lot of fun to ride, a lot of torque, and
Oh yeah.
the less weight, the more power you got.
Oh yeah, it's all kinds of fun. But I wanted to get back to the motorcycle units. My perspective as a cop and a boss, I love seeing the motorcycles coming to an accident or a big scene like a fire or a shooting, because you guys would take care of the traffic for us. That freed up my guys to do the other stuff. And the bikes were a special unit, but you guys helped the cops. A lot of special units don't necessarily, the cops don't feel like you're helping us. It's like, you call for SWAT, say, and it's like, okay, well, now this is going to be a big Hollywood production. No, it's, you're going to be there for hours. It's going to be a standoff. They have their protocols, and I understand why they do what they do. But as a boss or a cop, where either you're freezing your butt off outside or, you're boiling if you're down by you, it's like you just want this stuff to be over with. And you saw them coming and they might lob some gas, break down a door, do whatever. And it's like once the scene was safe, it's like, bye guys. And my cops would be stuck with all the work. You guys
Mm.
would come to like some nasty accident. And it's like, yeah, we got this. And I'm like, you do? I'm like, wow, you guys are awesome. We love seeing you guys come.
Well, here in Pasco County, the Highway Patrol, state troopers handled the accident. We would uh, we dispatch to the accident scene, but it was just to clear the road or direct
Wow.
traffic. But
Really?
yeah,
Wow.
but the troopers did all the investigation. The only time we did any accident investigation was if it occurred in a parking lot.
Wow. See, like our bikes, this is all city, in Milwaukee. Our motorcycles would come and if it was a serious accident, like, limbs are, like off or, you're sweeping up somebody's liver or whatever the case may be, then they would take care of it. And, if somebody was dead, then the bikes would take care of it for sure. And then a traffic investigator would come out and do all the measurements in the investigation, take care of search warrants and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, luckily for us, we didn't have to do anything, just direct the
Wow.
traffic,
Oh
clear
man,
the
you
road.
did have the best job. Oh my
Oh
God,
yeah,
that's awesome.
yeah.
That's
But
amazing.
any lousy, dirty job that came along, they give it to motors. For instance, if you had an inmate in the hospital, motors was the one who would go over and have to sit in the hospital for 12 hours with the inmate.
Really?
Uh,
Oh, no
yeah,
kidding.
things like that. And I
Wow.
remember one year we had, have you ever heard of Gasparilla? It's a big
Yeah.
holiday. Okay, so the first year they sent us down to Gasparilla, but we couldn't take our bikes. That meant you were just standing there on the parade route for 12
Oh,
hours. You could hardly, the crowds were so tremendous, and they had fences on both sides. Just to get to the Portisand was a nightmare. So the next year came around, and everybody, I think we had 5 or 6 guys at the time, and I got everybody together. I said, look, if they send us to that this time, we're all saying we're not going. We'll tell the sergeant flat out, unless we take our bikes, we're not going. So there was a big argument about it with the sergeant, but finally he relented. And it was a wonderful day that because then all you did was cruise up and down the parade route on
oh
the motor.
yeah.
Oh, it was fantastic. We actually enjoyed the parade, and from that time on, that's what we did, and that was it turned out to be a great job. But initially, we had a sergeant who he wasn't on motors, and
Okay.
it seemed like he would do everything possible to make your life because he knew it was a great job. So
Yeah.
he wanted to make your life as miserable as he possibly could, because I guess he was jealous of the fact that, he didn't have a bike himself. It wasn't really, he was just in charge of the unit. He knew
Oh,
nothing
okay.
about.
Gotcha. Now, how many years were you with the sheriff's department?
From 89 until 2005, full time. Then 2005, I went part time for the last 11 years. So I did a total of 26 years.
Oh, you could work part-time?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. My business got so good because we were doing a lot of traveling. It got so good that it was costing me money to go to work. As my video took off and I became very well known, I would be contacted by rallies around the country and
Yeah.
hog chapters, etc. And they would ask for us to go there and put on a show or a demonstration.
Yeah.
And we even bought a motorhome so we could do this. We used to travel
Wow.
quite a bit. If I had to work, I actually, they would pay very good to be there. Plus, we would sell a ton of videos. So if I went there and had to go to work, I could be losing ten to $15,000. So I decided
Oh,
to go part time.
wow. I'll be darned. Yeah, that's amazing to me. Yeah. Now, with the motorcycles, I mean, you were around a lot of crashes. Maybe you didn't do the paperwork for them, but what are some of the most common contributors for a motorcycle or a car crash and how to avoid them?
With motorcycle crashes, it's mainly the driver violating the right of way of the motorcyclist by either turning left in front of them
Oh
or
yeah.
pulling out from the right in front of the motorcycle. And mainly it was because the drivers would say, I never saw him. And it's conditioning. Here in America, we're not, drivers are conditioned to look for other vehicles, trucks or cars. They're not conditioned to look for motorcycles. They may actually see the motorcycle and it just doesn't register in their conscious. It's in their subconscious. So they think nothing of pulling out because they don't, see it as a threat or even recognize that what they're doing to pull out in front of a motorcycle.
Okay. Now, let's see. What other instances that you could think of that are big factors and like even like car accidents?
The main factor is not looking far enough ahead. I remember when I'm at an accident scene, and we generally here in Pasco, we would have a fire truck, the lights, the sirens, an ambulance, a car, and the motorcycle, all with the lights on. You're at a big intersection.
Yeah.
And I would notice cars that were coming towards me. I could tell when they actually recognized me was about 100 feet away. You would see the front end of the car dip down, knowing that that's
Yeah.
when the person hit the brakes. If instead the person was looking 12 seconds ahead, which is what we always say on motorcycles, the further ahead you look, the more chance you have to react.
Right.
So if you're looking 100 feet in front of your front tire, and you always hear people say, "It happened so fast I couldn't do anything about it." What that really means is I wasn't looking far enough ahead. I wasn't
Mhm.
paying attention to what's going on down the road. Because if you're looking 12 seconds ahead, you've got 12 seconds to come up with a plan to avoid the crash that you're about to get into. If you're looking 2 seconds ahead, well, you got 2 seconds to make that decision, and
Yeah,
that's not enough.
one thing that I did notice once I started riding bikes more seriously was I became a lot better driver in my car.
Yeah, I noticed the
Be-
same thing. Yes.
Yeah, your head's on a swivel. It's like you see that, you're going down the road at 35, 40 miles an hour and you see the cars that have stop signs or whatever. And, it's like right away, you're like, okay, is that guy going to pull out in front of me? And where am I going to go if he does? All those scenarios just start rolling through my head all the time, even in my car.
Yeah, once you realize on a motorcycle how open you are to, there's no cage around you, and then you get into the car. It's like I said, you become a better driver. I remember just driving a car, and here in our main road here is US 19, and there's a lot of breaks or islands of the road where cars could pull out in front of you. So in the car, you're cruising along, and you may adjust your speed, you may not when there's a car in the middle island that you know is going to pull out. But on the motorcycle, you better be covering the brakes. You better slow
Yep.
down because chances are that person is going to pull out in front of you. So now when you get back into the car, you look at it the same way. Well, is that car? I'll move over to the right, or I'll slow down. Same thing at all. Most crashes occur at intersections. So uh, it does for sure make you, when you're more careful in your motorcycle, it makes you more careful in your car as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, you have testified and you continue to testify in what fatal accidents or anything dealing with motorcycles. Can you kind of tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I guess about 15 years ago, I got contacted by a fairly good sized law firm. And the gentleman said, you know, I ride a motorcycle and I've got your video. So we're working on a case. In this particular case, it was a kid on a Hayabusa, and he T-boned a FedEx truck at, I think at impact, he was doing 90. Now, those
Ooh,
bikes are 101st gear. And he
oh yeah.
said, would you be willing to look over the material we have and be our expert witness? So I said, yeah, you know, send me the stuff, and it pays very well. And they sent me all the information. Wound up, this actually did go to trial, and I explained why the crash happened. This was where a guy is, it's on a beautiful long straight road. You got probably, you could see 2 miles ahead.
Yeah.
It was the day he bought this motorcycle. He had no license at all.
Oh,
Never owned a
oh
motorcycle
no.
before. He buys the fastest motorcycle in the world. In fact, his driver's license was suspended at the time. So
Of course.
he's winding that bike out. Estimated speed before the crash was 130 or 140.
Ooh,
A FedEx truck stops at a stop sign and starts to pull out. Well, you can't judge. You know, cars are moving
no.
at 40. It was 40-mile-an-hour zone. You can't judge the fact that here's somebody doing 140. So
Right.
he's pulling out, and he would actually, the truck had passed his lane. He was in the right lane. The truck is now crossing the left lane. And he, according to the witnesses, steered right into the truck. And a witness
Oh,
said, I think it was like the movies. He wanted to go underneath the truck. And I think, no, that's not why. He didn't know anything about counter steering. So he tried to turn away from it. And by
oh.
turning away, he
He,
actually went right into the thing that he
yeah,
would
he
want
sure did.
to almost
Oh,
killed. And wound up, they spent a ton of money. Is actually his mother who was suing, and she's the one who co-signed for the loan because he couldn't even
oh,
loan, and she knew he had no license, but she co-signs for the loan, and then it wants to sue FedEx for, I don't know, $10 million or something. Well, they
oh,
wound up getting nothing because when I explained this to the jury, I even took in a bicycle wheel, and then I put a rod in between it and spun the wheel and showed them what counter steering is like, and the jury was able to hold it and feel it, that if you turn it this way, it's going to go that way, the opposite
right.
way. And it worked out really well. And from that time on, I started getting, well, 3 or 4 cases a year. I would get. I turned down a lot of them because anything having to do with the motorcyclist who was drinking and riding, I didn't want to have anything to do with that. But in fact, I just got a case the other day. But yeah, I still do it, and I enjoy doing it. It's kind of a pain in the ass because whenever you're dealing with attorneys, you know how they'll pick apart everything
Oh,
that you
sure.
do. But I can always back up what I say, and you know, I tell the truth even to the attorneys I'm working for. I say, look, this completely this motorcyclist's fault. He did everything wrong, and of course they still have to pay you, but they'll never call you out to court when you tell them the truth like that. But I feel is much better, you know, that the attorney knows what the real deal is, and is if he needs to settle, he should settle the case before going to trial because
Right.
it'll look worse for him at trial.
Yeah. Now, the kid driving the Hayabusa, I imagine that he was deceased on the scene very quickly.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Uh,
he died immediately. He had a full face helmet on, but you know, when you hit the side of
yeah,
a truck at 90 miles an hour,
that's
and it
just
was
the
a
difference. That's just the
long black
difference.
skid
Yeah, that's the difference between closed casket and open casket. Then,
marks.
it doesn't matter. You're still dead. Now, when and how did you start your motorcycle instruction course?
Well, as soon as I got out of motor school back in '99, I said, this is a revelation. Everybody who rides should know this. It makes riding so much safer and so much more enjoyable when you actually know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
So I first started just with some friends of mine, and I would set up some exercises, and I knew uh, from people who I was doing it for free. I said, it's tough to get people to actually come and practice with you. And I would say the reason why was, especially with men, there's a big ego thing. Nobody wants to admit that they have no clue what they're doing on a motorcycle. So I said the easiest way to reach them would be an instructional video that shows them step by step what to do, and you could do it on your own without anybody watching. And I first went on the internet and I had a signature picture. So anytime I posted on a forum, it would show me at the time I had a Honda VTX 1800, big long motorcycle.
Oh, yeah.
I had a signature picture of me making a U-turn within 2 parking spaces, 18 feet on this big bike. And people would say, is that Photoshop? I said, no, that's I'm a motor officer and they teach us, you know, how to handle the motorcycle like that. I said, would you be interested in buying a video that shows the motor officer techniques? And of course, people said yes. And I said, well, what would you pay for that? And I got, anywhere from $20 to $50 for a video of that.
Yeah.
So it took me about 6 months to come up with the first video. And the first day it went online, like I said, I sold 80 in a
Wow.
matter of like 3 hours. And it took off from there, and the business started. And I was really amazed that nobody had ever thought of this, because to me, it's just to be able to handle the motorcycle with such ease and so safely is really important. So I knew I had something when I started selling a bunch of videos. And because the video became so popular, people started calling me and saying, "Do you have a class?" So I had to come up with a
Mm.
class. And then we started spreading out. I think I have 19 schools around the country right now.
Oh,
And
okay.
then back then, this is around 2000, where everybody was buying motorcycles. So anytime it was a big rally, they would call me, and I'd go there. I taught the stuff to my wife, and I had a couple of friends who were also motor officer trained, and we put on a whole show for people. And they would, after the show, they would literally run to our table to buy the video. So it worked out really well.
Well,
And
yeah. You have people running to buy your stuff. Hell yeah,
yes,
that's awesome.
yes,
That's
fighting to
great.
get to, yeah, it was amazing. It was the
Now,
best idea I ever had.
now looking back, would you have changed anything regarding any of
Well,
that?
I always wished I would have done it 5 years earlier,
Mm,
but I couldn't have, because I didn't go to motor school. I didn't know anything about it. But
right.
had I been able to do this for, let's say, starting in 1995, rather than around 2000, 5 years later, I would be a multi-millionaire by now. You know,
Coulda, woulda, shoulda, right?
yeah, but we didn't have a motor squad. I didn't know anything about motor officers
Right.
or anything. It was really an impossibility to do it any sooner than what I actually did it. I'm the first guy ever to show these techniques to the average riding public, uh, and the first one on YouTube. I mean, there's a couple of dozen imitators now, but I'm the
Yeah.
first guy who said, "Hey, this is a good thing for people to learn." In fact, I've got, I think, 1,600 videos on YouTube of
Wow.
tips, tricks, and techniques, and I've expanded that to doing road tests on motorcycles and reviews on motorcycle gear and anything that I think would be of interest to motorcyclists.
Yeah, your YouTube channel is gigantic. And, I love hearing stories like this, like what you're doing. There's life after retirement as a cop. A lot of us don't think that way. Cops are so, you dig your heels in, it's like, well, this is life. And then I don't know what I'm going to do when I retire. We all know those cops, and it's sad because, they're just kind of like floundering, and they feel like they kind of like lost their way or their purpose in life. And I love hearing stories like this. Yeah, I interviewed Garrett. He was a canine handler for Miami PD. And his dad was a canine handler, and his stepmom was a canine handler. I mean, I think this guy speaks dog. And yeah, he was a lieutenant, and he retired early. He retired like after 19 years. He didn't get a full pension, but his business, he has American Standard Dog Training, and he does the same thing as you do. He sells courses. There's like he's got like a doggy boot camp where people like bring their dogs to him. And he also has, the videos, that you can purchase, and there's training courses. And I love to see cops, lean into their strengths like this, and really like just that whole entrepreneurial spirit is just it's amazing to me. And I love to see it because I think, it's like anybody can do it. You just have to put in the work, and you have to have the talent too.
Yeah, it's if you've learned something, uh, a lot of police training is very good. So if you've learned something in the police force, and think of a way how you can turn that into something to do after you retire. If you're
Right.
if, a firearms instructor, well, you can keep doing that to do it for the general public. But I thought when I was thinking about this, I'm saying this was such a life changer for me. I could change, I could do help so many people that I'll never
Yep.
meet all over the world. I even have a school in Japan, but
Wow.
there's thousands of people, hundreds of thousands now, that I get emails from people saying how I've saved their life. And it's just a wonderful feeling. I never thought I'd be able to do this. With police work, you do the best you can, but a lot of times it's shoveling shit against the tide. And
Yeah.
now I know what works, and I know that I could save people's lives, and I enjoy doing it. And that's why I don't have to do it anymore. But I still hold my classes every week, and I hope to do it until I can't get on the motorcycle anymore because I love doing it. It's my life. I like it much more now than police work because I'm my own boss and I have people that help me. But seeing these people turn around from being some of the worst, it's actually danger on the road to being a highly skilled rider in just a few hours. It's a wonderful feeling, and I love helping people. That's why I got into police work. I like to
Right.
help people, but now I can really help them because I got nothing, no boss over me telling me what I should do and
Right.
what I
Right.
can't do, and no lawyers. So yeah, it's just a wonderful thing. I hope to do it till I can't walk.
Yeah. Where did you get your entrepreneurial spirit, do you think? Where did that come
Uh,
from?
I've always had that, and I've tried
Okay.
several businesses through the years. I remember when custom vans became. You remember the custom
Oh, I
vans
sure
became.
do. Yep.
I was in that business, and then making some money, but people quickly figured out that it's a pretty easy thing to do, and it
Right.
doesn't take much to get into it. So before you know it, you got one guy doing it, then you got 10 people in the neighborhood do it,
Right. Right.
and I've come up with some ideas. I always wanted to sell the Tyson towel. If you remember, Mike Tyson would get into the ring, and all he had was a towel
Oh
with
yeah.
with a credit. So I thought, well, how can I market this? Because that's great beach wear. Have a towel with a hole in the middle of it, so that you're wearing your towel and you could lay on the towel.
Oh yeah.
But I knew how to market into that. Cajun ketchup was another idea. When Cajun food became popular, I said, "How about somebody make Cajun ketchup?" But I didn't know how to present that to a company without them stealing my idea. So,
Right.
of course, somebody did come out with that, and now you could buy Cajun ketchup anywhere. But this, when I first, I couldn't believe that I'm the first guy who thought this would be great for everybody who rides a motorcycle. But I was the first one to bring these techniques, the motor office techniques, to the general public, and it's worked out very well for me.
Now, if I go take your course, what should I expect if I take the Ride Like a Pro course, like if I physically do it, and how should I prepare?
Well, I always tell people the best thing to do is get my Ride Like a Pro video because on that video, you'll see exactly what you'll be doing at the class. And I explain all the techniques and I tell people if you practice just the first two exercises, get those down pat before you come to the class, you're going to be way ahead of the game. And the people who do that, when I've got 10 riders and four or five of them are head and shoulders above everybody else, I ask them, did you practice for it? Yeah, I got your video and I practiced. I did exactly what you said. I said, and the other people, they haven't. So those are the ones who are dropping their bike and really struggling. Well, the people who just practice just first two exercises are just head and shoulders above everybody else.
Okay, so what should I expect if I take your course? Like, how long is it? Is it like a day long, and how do you start out and how does it end?
Well, in the classes, it's depending on how many riders, it's between 4 and 5 hours. And I got the four to 5 hours down from because when I first started, I would do 8 hours. And I would notice that after about 4 or 5 hours, people started getting worse instead of better.
You're
And it's
getting
because
fatigued,
they
huh?
were so tense and
Yeah.
they were fatigued. If you're straining and you're holding and your hands like this, it's a lot physically. So
Yeah.
I came up with 4 hours was the ideal amount of time to get people to where they got to a certain point. And if they practiced after this, I would tell them that I say, look, you got pretty good, but if you never practice this again, you come back here a year later, it's going to be like 9 o'clock this morning. You'll be starting all over again. If once a week, once you learn the techniques, practice 20 minutes a week in an empty parking lot, it'll stay with you forever. So the course normally runs, like I said, about 4 to 5 hours, depending on how many riders I have. And 9 out of 10 riders will improve at least 200%. They'll leave there twice the rider they were when they started, and sometimes even better than that. I've gotten riders where if they practice prior to coming to me, I actually get them down to motor officer size and U-turns and figure eights. And I take them on the side because I always have an assistant that works with me. And I'll take the guys after the class is over, I'll take them on the side and I say, I think you're ready for actual motor officer course. And 9 out of 10 times I'm right. In fact, I just put up a video a couple of weeks ago with two guys who came to me. They were practiced. They did very well. I tightened everything up for them. And after they went through all the exercises. Then I started taking them I have another parking lot right next to me with 18-foot parking spaces and turns. and they both did very well. So it's just a matter of, you get out of it what you put in it. I tell them, I give you the tools, I tell you how to use the tools properly, and the rest is up to you.
Okay. Now, I watch your videos on YouTube. I like them a lot, and there's some other YouTubers that were taking your courses, like Doodle on a motorcycle. That proves, she's like maybe 100-pound female. The same thing with
Yeah.
Meg, Meg's motorcycle journey. Both
Hey,
of those gals are smaller stature and they were doing great.
yeah, it's size of strength. Like I say, it has nothing to do with it. It's determination. How determined are you to do this? And technique. Once you learn the technique, it doesn't take any strength. You're on a 900-pound bike, but you're not pushing it. You're not carrying it. You're not backing it up. You're just riding the motorcycle the way it was intended to be ridden. Most people ride using their instincts, and riding skillfully is the exact opposite of your instincts. That's why somebody has to teach you this. And been doing it, for cops for I think about 75 years. They've been the same course for police officers, and they're the top 2% of riders in America because they know these techniques. And it, I've had people at my class like Doodle. She came to me virtually no skills, and she had a Triumph Bonneville, which is really a small lightweight
Hmm.
motorcycle. She sold it because she thought it was too big and heavy. She kept dropping it. And inside of a couple of hours, I had her going through the course on an electric glide. She
Oh,
was
wow.
determined. She listened to what I said, and she was
Yeah.
able to follow the instructions. And as long as you practiced it, she went after she finished that day, and she was on the electric glide whipping it through the course. She said she went back home and she did a lot of other things, but didn't have time to practice. 2 years later, she came back to me, and it was like starting from day one. Well, she
Uh,
never practiced. Now, after that second time, she practices on a regular basis and has got to be a highly skilled rider at low speeds and high speeds.
yeah, that's great. And some of the basic stuff that I remember from, watching your videos, it's clutch, rear brake, and throttle, staying in that friction zone.
And turning your head and eyes. That's the
Right.
most important. Looking only where you want to put that front tire.
Yeah, it took me, I didn't realize the back brake thing until I started talking to some motorcycle guys and, on the job. And I've been riding bikes for, years and years and years. And I'm like, oh shit, I've been doing this wrong, the head and eyes thing. I remember I was asking an old salty bikeman. I said, I'm trying to get better at this. What's your suggestion? He said, the bike is going to follow where you're looking. Remember that, look to where you want to go. He said, one great place to practice is a cemetery. And I'm like, really? He says, yeah, think about it. There's a lot of sharp corners and you're going at slow speeds doing it. And I'm like, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, it's low speeds are the hardest because you actually have to ride the motorcycle. Anybody can cruise straight down the road,
Yeah.
make great wide turns once in a while, and come to a nice easy stop. And so many people have been doing that for 20 or 30 years, so they think they really know how to ride. Well, they're only good at doing the thing that you should have been able to do the very first day you're on the bike. As
Yes.
far as leaning, turning, and swerving quickly, they they have no idea how to do that. So when that car pulls out in front of you, motorcycle crashes, most impact is 20 miles an hour or below. So you're at the when you need to maneuver your motorcycle, you're at a low speed. If you've never leaned, turned, and swerved quickly, you're going to smack right into the very thing that you don't want to hit. If you don't know how to use your head and eyes, you'll look at that vehicle that pulled out in front of you, and as the more you look at it, the closer you're going to get to it until you eventually hit it.
Right.
It's as simple as that. It's just a technique. It's not size or strength or the kind of bike you're on. Some bikes are easier than others, but for the most part, if you learn the techniques, you could ride any motorcycle with the skill that you could with a Harley Davidson or a Triumph or an Indian, or it doesn't matter.
Okay. Good to know. So what advice would you give to those who are listening or watching this right now who want to start a business like yours? Not, teaching motorcycle stuff, but, have an idea and it's like, hey, you know what? I want to monetize this.
I think right now on YouTube you got to have 1,000 subscribers before you
Yeah,
can
that's
monetize it.
yes.
But like I said, since they changed the algorithms, I really couldn't tell you. I couldn't really answer that question
Okay.
truthfully. If you have an idea that nobody else is doing, and that there's a customer for that, it's just that right now on YouTube there's anything that you want to look up, from plumbing to electrical
Oh
work to,
yeah,
know,
absolutely.
a screen porch, whatever it is, it's on there. So try to find something that's not on there, but you think that there's a customer base for. It is the only advice I could give on that.
All right. Now, one last thing for your Ride Like a Pro course. You said that you have like 18 different like franchises
Yeah,
all over the
19.
country.
Yeah,
19?
and
Okay.
one in Japan. So if somebody goes to, depending on where you live, just go to ridelikeapro.com and click on other training locations, and you'll see all of them that I have. And if you want my class here in Spring Hill, Florida, it's classes with Motorman. And of course, all my videos are up on my channel.
Okay, very cool. Now I've got a couple of Facebook questions here. Let me find those from my Cops and Writers Facebook group. All right. Frank Carson, who is a traffic investigator, said, Motormen are awesome. They do amazing things with their motors. I love watching them work. And I'm like, yeah, I said, there's nothing like watching them, float around on a 900-pound bike. Donna McNichol says, no questions, but I know Jerry from his early riding days. My late hubby and I went on several rides with him and his wife, Donna. Great folks. And let's see here. Rachel
Her name sounds
Fried.
familiar. I can't place her face, but I
Yeah,
remember the name.
Donna McNichol. And then Rachel Fried. Have you ever taught anybody famous how to ride? If not, whom would you love to teach?
Uh, I was once contacted by Robert Blake. You remember from
Oh,
Beretta?
Beretta.
Yeah,
Yeah, I
he's the
remember
guy.
Beretta. Yeah.
Yeah, they arrested him for killing his wife.
Yeah, he did that. Yep.
Yeah, but he beat him. Anyway, if you've ever looked into that case, she needed killing. She
Yeah.
was a horrible person. She had done some horrible things, not just him, but to everybody. But anyway, yeah, he contacted me after he got out of jail, and he said, "I have this. I think it was a low rider." He said, and he hadn't ridden in a few years, and he needed some help with it. And he's out in California. I said, "Well, you can come here. I'd be happy to teach you." But I had a guy out in California who was one of my instructors, so
Yeah.
I referred to that guy. And after he spent a few hours with him, he called me up and he says, he was, I think, about 78, maybe close to 80 at that time.
Oh, wow.
And,
Okay.
and my instructor said to me, yeah, he shouldn't be on a bike. He's scared to but he can't do anything. He can't even figure out the clutch and throttle, to do
Ooh.
the race. So I said, well, okay, you did the best you can. And then Robert Blake called me up and says, yeah, your guy out there in California, he's a nice guy, but I don't think he helped. I explained to him, I said, we can't ride the bike for you. All we can do is give you the tools, show you how to use
Right.
it. The rest is up to you. And I also got contacted by a guy that was on The Sopranos, and I can't think of his name, but he got my video and he just he called to thank me because he said it changed his riding life, and he practices on a regular basis.
Mm.
And he was, I can't think of his name, but he's since passed away. But yeah, those are the two that immediately come to mind. And who would I like to teach? Really, any of the guys that you see riding motorcycles. What's the guy from Mission Impossible? You see him,
Oh, Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise. Yeah, I'd like to teach him. I'd like to see what he's really got, because you could do in the movies, you could make a
Oh, yeah, you can
motorcycle.
do anything. Right.
And Sly Stallone, I know he rides, and
Yep.
he's one of my heroes. And I said I'd like to teach him. So any of these guys are out there, contact me. I won't even charge you. Just video it for YouTube.
Well, remember there was a remake of Chips.
Yeah.
When was that? Maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more. And Dax, I forget his last name. He's got blonde hair and he rides like in real life. And supposedly he did almost all of his own stunts. He's supposed to be a very good rider, for a Hollywood person.
Well, and if they've already been trained, they don't need me. But I'm sure
Right.
there's plenty of them out there that haven't been trained, and
I'm sure.
that could use my help, and I'd be happy to do so.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up here, Jerry. Where can people find out more about you and your courses?
Just go to ridelikeapro.com, and we have the class schedule up there, and we have all our videos. Uh, on my YouTube channel is also called Ride Like a Pro. So if you type in the Ride Like a Pro channel, like I said, I think it's about 1,600 free videos on there, and
Okay.
you'll learn something from just about every one of them. And I tell people I'm the only guy on YouTube who offers a money back guarantee. If you're not satisfied with the video you just watched, I'll refund all your money. Of course, it's free. So, but people have asked for that. I want to refund. Yeah, it is free. Come on, this is free stuff. How could you argue with this? You don't want to do it, don't do it.
Yeah, I will personally attest to I don't have the course, but I've watched a bunch of your videos and they're super helpful. I'll be out on my motorcycle. It's like, oh, that's right. Jerry says do this. And I'm like, yep, works like Lucky Charms. Absolutely.
Yeah, I've been doing this so long, I know exactly what works and exactly what doesn't work.
All right. Well, thanks again for being on the show today, Jerry.
Well, the pleasure is all mine. I love talking motorcycles, and I'll do it with anybody.